Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of In the Pit with your host, Lobo Tigre. Our victim of the day is John Jentz. He's CEO of Latitude Uranium, which is a name change from recent things. John, why don't you go ahead and give us the 30,000-foot overview, and then I've got questions.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, Latitude, the old name was called Labrador, which was the historical properties. There's two assets in the company, two uranium assets. Again, the original one is called the CMB, or the Central Mineral Belt. It's in Labrador, and that's where Labrador came from. And when we acquired the Angelac asset, which is in Nunavut, again, both in Canada, in April, we changed the name to reflect a little bit more diversity outside of Labrador, but still within Canada. Latitude 50 sort of idea. Maybe we're not the best marketers, but hopefully we're the best miners. So that's where the name came from, and the name change, and the asset. And we've always had our myself and our executive chairman Phil Williams, who've worked together in the past, and we've always had our eye on a bunch of uranium assets over time. And this is one. And when it came available, we jumped on it, and that's when I joined the company too. So I've only been in the company for since April or so less than a year.
I did notice that you came with the property. Well, not with the property, but joined at the same time. If you don't mind, let's walk down memory lane a little bit. And I guess you weren't there, but I have followed this story for a while. And one of the questions I had from the get-go was, why did Consolidated spin out Labrador to begin with? I mean, the whole idea of Consolidated was to consolidate, just buy in all these uranium things and get this huge number of pounds on the books. Why did this company even exist in the first place?
Yeah, I'd love to skirt the question, but unfortunately, I can't skirt the question because I'm still on the board of Consolidated today. So I've watched as this has progressed, and the reality is that the Labrador properties weren't just what Consolidated in it, and it was the vending in of at least three, to my knowledge, maybe four properties. One was from Consolidated, one was from Mega Uranium, and the Altius fellows
Right.
gang put in some properties as well. So it was sort of it was an aggregation of properties. And I think the thought was at the time is that it's a fairly, even in a consolidated only world, it was a fairly large land package that was unclear where it was positioned within the Consolidated portfolio of, Consolidated's got some great assets, at least in my view. And it was unclear where it fit. And so I think when the opportunity came to sort of spin it out or combine it effectively in a new company, I think the company took it, and I think that's where the genesis came from.
All right. And can you walk me through the Angelac acquisition? I mean, it almost, as I recall, you had something like 70 million shares outstanding at the time. You paid 100 million shares and some cash. It was almost like a takeover. Like why didn't Valour just buy Labrador? And explain that to me. It just kind of looks very odd on the deal side.
Sure. I can understand why that might look a little odd. I mean, Valour, we've known Jim and the Valour, it was called Kivalliq before, way back when. And they've had the asset at least since the last run, which was, 2012 or so, when the uranium spiked to wherever it was, 140 or so. And they sort of have been trying to manage the property as best they can during sort of uranium coming down to sort of bottom out around the 30s or wherever it was. And it's sort of making its way back up now wherever it's going. And again, we're positive on uranium as most are. But because the market or they weren't getting very much traction with the asset, they acquired at some point, I don't know when it was, but a PG asset in Brazil. And I think what happened, Jim never told me this directly, but I think what happened is they had these two decent assets. I don't think they were getting love for either asset. So I think they finally said uncle and said, okay, well, let's get rid of one and focus on the other. And they decided to get rid of Angelac and focus on the Brazil PG stuff. So we're more than happy to take the asset off their hands at that time.
So, and I mean, before this, the CMB was the cat's meow, but I followed that from a long time when Frontier got it and then spun out Aurora and then reacquired it back and so on. And it's huge, right? It's lower grade, but it's huge. And now we rotate to Angelac, which is higher grade. So I could kind of see that on the grade front, but on the other hand, it's smaller. And so, and I also noticed on your presentation that it's Angelac first and then CMB. So it looks like really the other assets have all been push down the food chain, and the focus is on moving Angelac forward. Is that right? And what does the future look like for this company?
Right. It's not that the CMB is there anything wrong with it, or it's not still what we thought it was. It's that Angelac, in terms of capital allocation from the top, bang for your buck at Angelac is, you say it's smaller, but actually in a resource size, it's actually bigger. It's 43 million pounds. It's a real asset, and it actually has the capability today, if you wanted to, you could, assuming permitting for a second, but you could actually put the thing into production today. We have some discussions that are on that basis today that, we would, our shareholders today, what they want us to do, they say you've got world-class grade at Angelac. Angelac at 0.69 is the second highest grade globally, to our knowledge, outside the Athabasca.
All right, when you say put it into production, I wasn't aware that there was infrastructure already there. You don't mean that, you mean shovel ready to start building, right?
Well, we could have if we had the money and the time frame. If this was in a big company and sort of I was in charge, or I had the money in myself and I was doing it privately, you could have a 3 to 6 year production plan, depending on time frames and permitting, and the actual infrastructure and actually producing of the asset is actually the I won't say the least of the worries, but it's not 1 or 2, it's like 5 or 6. It would be a relatively small plant in any scenario that we look at. Even hoping for the stars and the moon, you can't get over 1,000 ton a day plant size.
Right. And we are talking hard rock mining here. There's no thought of ISR.
No, this is traditional hard rock mining. What this really is it's if you want to think about it logically, you don't need to be a uranium analyst or expert or even a mining expert to figure it out. It's a subvertical sheet, on average 2 meters wide, starts at surface, goes down at least 300 meters today. The historical drilling has only been down 300 meters for a variety of reasons, primarily economics. And so it looks like a book inverted on its side, standing up. And you can take your analogy from copper, gold, wherever, whatever mining you want to take it from. But you could mine this, sort of standard, which would be 20 to 30% open pit, 60 to 70% underground, which typically that's how these things work. Not prejudging the outcome. We're looking at, can you actually mine it like a coal seam? Maybe, maybe not. Again, we're not quite there, but we're, as we do our drilling and as we expand the resource, we like to keep the eventual mining scenario in mind, because, at least in my view, I think investors will start to focus on, it's great, the uranium price is going up, but how do you monetize that? How does that come back into your economics? How do the margins work? Anyone can drill a good hole here or there, but eventually, at some point, people have to see.
Sure. So is there a PEA or a PFS in the works then?
A bit of, and not. I've got an Excel spreadsheet that's mine that no one's reviewed. If that's what you consider a PEA, but it's fairly, at least in my view, the assumptions are reasonable. So that's
no, I'm not trying to put you on the spot on that. I'm asking, is that part of the deliverables for the market? If you need to clarify the value proposition, a scoping study would be one way to do that. Is that
the
not
answer
in the plan?
The answer is sort of, and I'll explain why the answer is sort of. What our shareholders want us to do, which we did this year, and what we're going to do next year, is drill and increase the resource size. That's what we did this year, and we can talk about that. That's what the plan is for next year, and that's what we're going to do. And the plan is to put an updated resource out at the end of next year, around this time next year, put an updated resource showing that the growth from 43 million pounds to wherever. The answer to your question is this, is that if we do that, which we have done and which we will do, and I believe we will do successfully, and the market still doesn't care, and the market yawns and our market cap is still undervalued, then that is one arrow in the quiver that we can pull out to make a better value proposition.
All right. And you are making new discoveries, as I understand. So, why put a scoping study on it if it might change? Particularly if you have parallel lenses, then that changes your pit dynamics. So this new lens, I've seen from your press releases that you have this new area, but it seems kind of small so far. Is there a theory though that it could run parallel along and pinch and swell or whatever and add more tons on strike?
Yeah, I think our working geological theory on the new lens is that the existing mineralization is in the footwall, and we think what we've hit within the lens is the hanging wall. And it has two significant implications if that's actually true. One is that you should be able to, subject to faults and breaks, you should be able to extend that across the rest of the deposit or much of it. And secondly, when you look at the mining scenario, it shifts the dynamics a little bit down the road from sort of a, you're in an open pit scenario. The problem with an open pit is you're going to get killed on the strip with a narrow high grade mine. But if you start bringing in ore that you replace waste with ore effectively, it changes that open pit dynamic. And so, we don't have that full on model going now, but you play around in Excel a little bit, and it's again, we're not there, but if you look 2 years down the road, it's interesting. It's very interesting.
So this is the target for the year ahead, is checking a long strike for the parallel structure?
That would be one. Yep, that's one. Secondly, our second batch of assays come out about probably at least 2 or 3 weeks away now. But when they do come out, the west side of the main zone, and remember, the existing mineralization is 43 million pounds. It's in 4 zones. We've only focused this year on the main zone, which is one of the 4. And so, the west side at depth has always been a question around the deposits. It's been a question for 20 years. Typically your most economic mineralization is from 0 to 300 meters. That's what most people believe. The historic drilling on the west side of the main zone, again, with the assays the counts per second are in the press release, the assays are upcoming. We went down to 400 meters, and it looks like we've picked up this 200-meter wide zone of sort of intermittent mineralization from sort of ranging from low grade to high grade. They picked it up.
Sorry, 200 meters wide, not strike?
Wide. At depth. So it's, they picked it up from 100 meters down to 300 meters. We picked it up, we believe, from 200 to 400 meters. So it looks like it's this plunging chute, if you will. I mean, 200 meters is not really a chute, but plunging body, if you will. And if that's true, the question that we need to figure out over the winter is that, do we extend it? Do we go deeper? Do we look for more of them? What do we do with that?
I suppose it would depend on the grade, if the grade justifies going deeper or not. And I don't want to get you in trouble here, but you've seen the core that you sent off to assay. Did it stink?
Well, I mean, it's good core in the sense that it's the mineralization is controlled structurally by it's within the basalts, and basalts are physically, they look black, so you can kind of, when you look at the core, you can actually, it's a good visualization of where things are, and you sort of know where you're in or out. It doesn't mean you can guarantee it runs grade, but you have an idea of how to interpret structure from that. I
meant stink in a friendly way. Pitch blende has that smell, but
it does. But the problem is it's so cold up there that it dulls your senses a bit.
All righty. So in terms of the mineralization, I had a question about that. I noticed, of course, hard not to, the ore sorting slide. And I understand that ore sorting can work and can add value, but generally speaking, it's something that sends investors running the other way. Like if you have to have ore sorting, that means there's a problem there. Why are we looking at ore sorting, and how much benefit? What's the level of testing there? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, typically, I think your comments are more based on deposits that are lower grade, because ore sorting tends to work. It's not magic. I mean, ore comes in on a conveyor belt. It goes through some, typically uranium's a little different because it's a scintillometer that picks it up. And the higher the grade, the easier the scintillometer can distinguish between waste and ore. When you look at it in sort of more bulk commodities, it's more difficult because the grade's lower, and so the benefits of ore sorting are less. As you get lower grade, they're less clear. As you get higher grade, they're more clear. In our case, this is a study they did historically. I've known Tomra, the company. They do ore sorting machines all over the place and all sorts of commodities. They're a reputable firm, and again, we're not quite at that stage, but it's something that is really piqued my interest. It's not that I don't read everything back to back, but I read the report back to back and up and down, and I'm eager to get out to British Columbia and see these guys and see if this is at all true. if you look at some of these graphs, I mean, it was done on a sort of a bench scale with, I think it was, can't remember the tonnage, decent tonnage, but not at sort of a commercial industrial scale. But if it's at all remotely true, if you can remove half the waste and only lose 3% of the ore.
Right. The cost savings, I get it. When it works, it's a thing of beauty.
Of course. But the deposit doesn't need it. The deposit being high grade doesn't need it. So it only jacks up your economics. It's not required to get your economics, above.
Well, let's talk about high grade for a second, because it's high grade by non-Athabasca standards. But the Athabasca does exist. So if somebody's looking at uranium plays, and they're looking at high grade projects in Athabasca, why would they care about Angelac?
I can answer that very easily, because if they scratch even a little bit below the surface, when you look at, Athabasca is geologically unique in the world, to my knowledge, in that it's in sandstones. And for people that don't know what sandstones are, it's basically you're trying to actually mine, and think of it as a combination of quicksand and toothpaste. It's the semi-aqueous stuff that you will sink in, but you can't put a mine wall around it. I mean, when you actually look at what Cameco is doing as an example, because they're very good with their public disclosure and how they actually mine things like Cigar Lake, they have to freeze around the ore body at 800 meters deep, and they go in with what are effectively glorified electric shovels, wheelbarrows, if you will, but it's got the grade that it can do that. The cost to do that is astronomical, but you have the grade to do that. This I think is and then you look at, so that's one end of the spectrum, Athabasca. The other end of the spectrum is just traditional hard rock. And, I saw a report a few days ago, couldn't figure out whether it was actually true, but they said the global head grade, or the global resource grade across all uranium deposits was 0.1. True or not true, I don't know, but it gives you a sense of Athabasca's in the multi-percents. This is a 0.1 or thereabouts. I think we're sort of the best of both worlds, a little sketchy, but we have the grade, but we have it in a traditional hard rock deposit. So we're not using anyone, even if you don't know how mining works, you can look at it and go, here's a little pit, here's how you go underground. It's all very understandable that way. If somebody tried to explain to many people how you actually mine in the Athabasca, even to people that are very knowledgeable in mining, it's very different, it's very expensive, and it's not easy to understand. Ours, conversely, is super easy. We would, when you look at our PEA, whenever it gets produced, it'll be, you could shut your eyes and put gold or copper or silver on the top, and it would look exactly the same. Not a big deal.
All right. Okay. So in terms of deliverables going forward, the primary focus is Angelac. We've got drill results pending already. And then
assays pending.
Right, assays pending. And next year, based on that, we refine the targets, but we want to look at this parallel structure and extensions of known zones. And is that it for Angelac, or is there anything else? And what are we doing at CMB?
Yeah, I know it's pretty simple, and it's not terribly sexy, unfortunately, but it's just growing the resource at Angelac. It's expanding on what we've known.
Sexy enough. I said that's sexy enough. Growing the resource is fine. Go ahead.
I know it's for some, it's some people want the serious high octane stuff, but we're just doing very basic stuff. This is an existing deposit, so we want to grow the resource at Angelac, and that's the plan. It's
all right.
Reasonably simple.
And will the Central Mineral Belt project be advanced at all, or just left on the back burner until you got the first one up and running?
Yeah, it depends on. We've got two things coming out of the CMB. The first thing coming out is a property called Mustang Lake. Mustang Lake is on trend from Michelin's Paladin's Michelin deposit, and what we're looking for there is actual drill targets. So we'll see what that produces, and that should be out in less than 4 weeks. And towards the end of the year, in December, we did a property-wide radiometric ground survey. And the two things we're looking for there, again, you pointed out, the property on a consolidated basis is about 125 kilometers long. I mean, this is quite the property. It's almost, in some respects, too big. We're looking for uranium occurrences that were previously unknown, and the team is quite excited about the potential for IOCG. I mean, there's lots of copper occurrences, and I'm not you have to talk to the structural geologist a little bit more. That's not my specialty, but they're quite convinced that this is the right setting where you might find, iron oxide, copper, gold, deposits? And if so, I guess it's a bit of a Hollywood problem, because when you find them, they're big, but it'll show up on the gravity surveys. It'll show up. It'll be fairly obvious. The big one is the Olympic Dam that everyone refers to. I mean, they as a byproduct, they produce, I think, 8 million pounds of uranium out of
Right.
the dam. So you find these things, they tend to be big, but they tend not to be small company projects. So again, if we find it'll be a Hollywood problem about what to do or what not to do with it.
Yeah. Well, we also nothing on you, but it's a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, IOCG type target," and you know what? I haven't heard of anybody discovering another Olympic dam since Olympic Dam. You know, it's the comparison, but
Of course,
the reality is harder to land. But okay.
agreed.
So what's the budget look like for the year ahead? How much are you going to spend at Angelac, and how much are you going to put into your other projects?
Yep. The answer is that we haven't done that work at this point. It depends. What we have in the cash today, we have about a little over 3 million left over. That's after we still got some invoices trickling in from both Angelac and CMB. Both programs are effectively done. There's still internal work to be done on these, but we spent 8 million at Angelac, we spent 4 at the CMB, and we still have 3 million left over. As people might realize, we just raised at least 5 million in flow through. That should close at the end of the month. And so we should have, depending on your numbers, 7 or 8 million going into next year. And the reality is, we could have a budget for that. We could have a budget for twice that if that's what the investors want to fund. It's just
All right. So this current financing, it has not closed yet? It's still open?
still open.
Okay. All right. Well, something for the audience to consider. But the orders are coming in. You're confident you're going to have the money for next year without another financing?
It was bought, so it's like the funds are there. It's not a question of whether the funds are there. They're not there. They're there. Whether they exercise the shoe for an extra $1 million, that I guess that's an open question. So those funds will be used for next year. And again, we've got a budget that can. Again, we haven't.
Sure. Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. Okay, well, let's talk about political risk. None of it, Labrador, and I know the CMB project has been there for a while, but nobody's tried to really move it towards permitting. I don't even know if it has a study on it, but are these places as welcoming as Saskatchewan? I mean, I don't know how and do you have First Nations issues on any of your properties?
Oh, sure. On both, absolutely. I mean, I think to answer for the CMB or Labrador, I think it's probably better. It's probably better to ask that question of Paladin. I mean, they've got a PA on Michelin. It's a real deposit. It's 127 million pounds, I think. Their community relations are more advanced than ours, and so can you do work there, and how does it work there? I think it's probably a better question for them. But I can tell you, at Angelac and Nunavut, our local community, and you got to remember, Nunavut is. I don't have the exact stats, but our local community is a town called Baker Lake, and Baker Lake's got maybe 2,200 people. This is not a big place, but it's also the local community for Meadowbank, which is one of Agnico's mines, gold mines, and so Meadowbank's been in production for 10 or so years, and so the two important things to note there is that all of the mining issues. Forget about uranium for a sec, but all the mining issues. Ships coming in, diesel refineries and storage and how it works, putting roads in or not, finding welders, the basic stuff of mining, caribou migration patterns, which are important. They still harvest the caribou. It's quite an important food source. All of those type of issues have been well trod over the past 10 years. Is there a little education to do in terms of actual uranium? Sure. But again, that's not a constraining item in the timeline. So we don't see that as being an issue. If you're a good corporate citizen and you do what you say you're going to do, typically in Canada, you get your permit.
I'm side point. I'm glad to see you or hear you say it that way. All this new ESG nonsense really irritates me, because a business ultimately has to be a business, and it's not like good corporate citizenship never existed before. But anyway, we don't need to go there. But to the point, I guess I'm aware of mining in both of these provinces, and I understand that it can be done, but uranium is its own special beast. People get scared of it. off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of any uranium mining in Nunavut at the moment. But I guess giving you the benefit of the doubt, your local consultations, people aren't too freaked out by it.
No, because I mean, one thing that people don't quite understand, that's fine. I mean, in terms of the supply chain, it's not like we're putting a reactor up and sticking rods in and producing electricity. I mean, ultimately, we're going to produce yellow cake and ship it most likely by air out. So, it's not like there's a big refinery going on or anything like that. So it's just educating people on how the whole thing works. I mean, you got to remember our property from Baker Lake there's good things about it, there's bad things, but good thing about it, it's 200 kilometers away. And so
Definitely out of sight, perhaps out of mind. We'll see.
yeah, of course. I mean, the corollary of that is it's 200 kilometers away, so you have to get there too. So
Right. Is there an all-season road, or will you need do you use ice roads in the winter?
we use ice roads in the winter today. There's no summer road, so we do helicopter. I can give you the analogy at Meadowbank. Meadowbank's approximately, we're in different directions from Baker Lake, but they're about 100 kilometers north, and they have a road.
All right. Okay. Well, I think I have an idea for where you're at and where you're going. I appreciate you sitting still for some tough questions. The one I always wrap up with is the skin in the game question. If you want me or my audience to put our hard-earned money into your company, how much of your own have you put in?
Yep. To date, zero. And that's not because I don't want to. It's because I joined in April, and I've been sort of locked out because I've had basically information that the public hasn't had, both on the Angelac acquisition and when that closed on our drilling and our things. So just recently, when we released the financing, I will be participating in the financing.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you answering that one straight up. Well, again, you've been a good sport. I've asked the questions that come to my mind. I'll let you have the last word. Is there any last points that you want to make sure that the audience takes away from this interview?
No, I mean, I think if your viewers are interested in uranium, which I think they should be, my view on uranium is that, unless the world's going to, uranium nuclear has to get at least its pro rata of GDP growth. You can figure out what that is for yourself, and it's got to have a disproportionate share from the fossil fuel category. How fastly, how quickly? If the world wants to get to any of these goals and achieve even remotely close to them, nuclear, all roads go through nuclear. And so the price, I think is going to be very firm over the next 5 to 10 years, in my view. And I think we're positioned properly, in the middle somewhere, where we're not very speculative, we're not in production, but you can look at what we have and put some tangible metrics around it. If you want to do value per pounds in the ground, you can do that. If you're a little bit more handy, you can almost do a quick NPV on the back of with 10 or 12 variables, if you're a little bit more technically inclined. But all roads are that we're undervalued, and people, if people are interested in uranium, I think they should give us a look, and if they have any questions, they can certainly follow up. They can certainly follow up with me directly.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and definitely keep us posted.
Terrific. Thanks so much.
Thank you for watching this edition of In the Pit with Lobo Tigre. If you enjoyed or found value in what you just saw, and you're watching this on any sort of social media, please do hit the like button and the share link. Send this on to anybody you think might be interested. That helps us out a lot. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button as well. The number of subscribers helps us get more valuable content to you as well. On the subject of subscribing, I'll quickly say that if you're not a subscriber to our free weekly Speculators Digest, I encourage you to sign up. I promise if you do, we will not send you a flood of daily advertisements. You get one free weekly digest with original research not published anywhere else. Check it out at independentspeculator.com. Thank you and have a great day.